Hey guys, welcome. We have a new hero that is entering the Heroes of the Storm Nexus. That hero is Mei. Mei is a climatologist in the Overwatch universe, and she is known for being the actual devil. No, she was one of the most annoying heroes in Overwatch purely because, and excuse all of this stuff, that's part of the new anomaly, and I'll talk about that later, possibly in a different video, but there are random effects that can happen. That being said, Mei was considered the devil purely because she was so difficult to deal with and she had the highest CC among all of the heroes in the game. She could freeze with her basic attack. She could freeze with her ultimate. If you were frozen, she could one-shot you. And she also had way more survivability than anyone really should have as far as the amount of damage that she could do and the amount of survivability. She was just extremely annoying to play against and a ton of fun to play. And that's what made her really annoying. A lot of people in the Overwatch community said the only way to balance her is to make her a tank, balance her off of a tank, and reduce all of the extra damage that she does. While the Overwatch dev team hasn't listened, the Heroes of Storm team has listened. We wanted a new tank in the game, and Mei also should probably fit as a tank for the amount of CC that she has. Which means she is now in the tank role. Mei is a new tank that has entered Heroes of the Storm, and she's come from Overwatch to investigate these new snow anomalies that have entered, snow and rain anomalies anyways, that have entered the Heroes of the Storm world, or maps, or worlds, or whatever. That being said, let's get into all of her talents and abilities. I actually have just finished with an hour and 20-minute long video about this, and I decided I'm not going to have you guys watch all of that. I'm going to give you guys a more structured version of this so that you can get a better idea. It's still going to be pretty long, though, because I do want to share two possible builds at the very end after kind of playing around with it a little bit so you guys can kind of experience what I think would be pretty good. But I will say that she is built in a way that's less about builds and more about situations, which is what I think most heroes should be built as, so that you can't just follow a build that you pull off the internet. You kind of need to adapt a lot based off the maps and the heroes that you're playing with. So I really like her talent, all of her talents anyways. But we'll get into that. Let's start off with her abilities. So, her basic kit anyway, she has a 4.5 attack range, which is pretty decent. It's one of the highest, I would say, for any sort of tank. And it's pretty decent. It's higher than Tychus, higher than Baseline Tracer, Cassia, stuff like that. It kind of still feels relatively low because she actually has a really big hitbox. Her hitbox is around a tank, I would say. Her health is also very high. She's higher than people like Arthas and ETC, but still lower than people like Murden, Diablo, and Stitches. So she's at a pretty good amount of health as far as tanks go. A decent amount of survivability. I would say she's a little bit squishier because she doesn't have as much armor as a lot of these tanks do. Like ETC almost always has that 25 armor because you get that armor every time you use an ability, and he's going to be structuring out his abilities most likely in a way that he's always going to have that 25 armor, making ETC still probably as tanky or tankier than Mei as long as he's not getting CC'd. Mei is going to be a little bit more tanky if she's getting CC'd, but either way. So that is her basic health and all of that. Her attack range, she attacks once per second at a moderate, I would say a relatively low amount of damage. She should be doing about 164 DPS, which is rather low. I mean, for a tank, that's not bad, but people like Murden and Anubra can get rather high with their attack damage with all of their bonuses. She does have a little bit of a bonus you can take, but there's actually an auto-attack build you can go, but I wouldn't recommend it. Auto-attack builds on tanks usually are rough because you're CC'd so often. You eat the CCs for your team, and because you're eating the CCs for your team, you don't get a lot of time to auto-attack. So, let's talk about our abilities. Snowblind. Snowblind is an ability that does very low damage, slows enemies for 35%, and blinds them for 1.5 seconds, adding another blind into the game. Currently, there are only 3 baseline blinds in the game with Joanna, Cassia, and Lily. Additional blinds can be added through talents, but overall, they're relatively low. So, if you're playing with a or against a Greymane or an Illidan, having more blinds in the game are going to be brutal for them. At the same time, having more blinds on your team as a Cassia is also going to be really nice. So it's nice that they have added another baseline blind to kind of add a little bit more consistency to some of those heroes. That makes it a little bit easier to buff Illidan, knowing that there's more blinds that are going to be common. Then we have Blizzard. And its range is pretty nice, too, and its size is pretty nice. Let me toggle cooldowns. You can easily throw these out from a decent range and slow people and to set up for some other abilities that you have. Cooldown's 10 seconds, which is relatively long for an ability that's kind of like this. It's a light slow, nothing crazy. But you can use it kind of like Blaze's Oil to set up for your other stuff. It's a decent peeling tool. If, like, say, an Illidan dives on your carry, boom, you blind him, slow him, so your carry can get out alive. Or you range your healer, whatever. So that's pretty much the best part about Snowblind. It's just high utility, can set up for your other abilities, or it's just good. Now we get into Blizzard. Blizzard was an ultimate ability in Overwatch. I'm not going to talk too much about how it worked there because it works different here. So it starts off with a light slow at 7%, and it ticks every 0.25 seconds, and that slow will build up to a 35% slow. If you want to just instantly have a better slow, then you can combo that slow with your Snowblind, so you can throw both out, and then they'll just stay at a 35% slow the entire time that they're in it. If they're in it when it ends, and it ends after 2 seconds, they will be stunned for 1.25 seconds. So it's kind of like Deckard's Root in a way, because you're going to be comboing Deckard's Root with your slow. You kind of want them to stay in it for the full duration, or at the end they get stunned. It's also a pretty good zoning tool because you can throw that out and it zones for the entire duration because people don't want to step in it because when it ends they're going to be stunned. So it kind of looks like this when you're going to be stunning with it. Right at the end, it'll pop, and then they all get stunned for 1.25 seconds. That stun is the same duration as ETC's stun and Varian's taunt, meaning that this will be a really good setup if you can get it and land it consistently. There are some tricks with this, and I'll talk about it a little bit later. Icing. Slide quickly to the targeted location or direction. When this effect ends, enemies near Mei are knocked back. They take damage, and it's a very low amount of damage, and are slowed for 80%, decaying over 1.5 seconds. So that decaying slow is, it decays really, really fast. So it's good immediately, and then gets kind of bad afterwards. So the way that this talent works is you can kind of go like this, and you can send an enemy flying. The thing is it doesn't actually hit one person. So you can actually just go right through people if you want to and use it as an escape, and it will knock people back from wherever you end off. So you can send people towards your team if you want to. Let's say the team's up here and you decide to engage, you can send people towards your team. You can also send back the enemies away, making it a really powerful engage. It's kind of like ETC slide combined with his W, but there's also extra tricks that you can do with this as well. Let's say, for example, you do your W, but the enemy runs out of it. So let's say that you threw it when the enemy was here, but the enemy ran out of it. As they ran out of it, you can actually send them back into it so that they get stunned. So it can combo really well with your other abilities. So you can throw your W, let's say the full combo would look something like this. You'll throw your Q to slow them so that you can land your W, and then you'll go in and you'll send them back into your W. And that is going to be a really powerful tool for making sure that all of your Ws land. And that's going to be key. Because if you can't get your W's to land, you have almost no stuns in your entire kit. And if you have no stuns, you're relying on slows, and slows are okay, but they don't actually interrupt anything. They're just there. So that's where this entire thing is rough. I mean, your knockback will interrupt some stuff, but it's not going to interrupt a lot. So that gives you her base kit. She does also have a trait, a very powerful trait, that it will heal you for 35% of your health while you're frozen, and you are attackable while frozen, so it does not make you protected, but it does give you a large enough shield that you'll be able to survive through a decent chunk of the damage. And if it does break early, you lose the rest of your healing though. So you don't want to be taking a ton of damage when you use it. And if you do see a Mei using this, and if you're playing Varian, you could shield Shatter just to get rid of her healing as well. It would be a strong counter to her. But yeah, if she does get the full duration off, it's a lot of healing, 35% of her health. It shields her for about 30% of her health. So you combine both of those, and she's about 65% of her health that she has potential. But most likely it's only going to be about 30 to 40% depending on how much shield is broken and how much healing is gained from it. If her shield's broken fast enough, then she only gains about 10% of her health back. If her shield isn't broken at all, then she doesn't gain the value of her shield. So it's one of those that gains a lot of different values. Definitely a cool ability, and it should be used in a good way anyways, because it can be canceled early, so it could be a great way to like take some of the shield portion and then back off. It could be something where you pop it just long enough to get your icing off cooldown and then you leave. Now remember that your icing does not make you unstoppable, and people are likely going to spam CC for right as when your thing ends. You're going to get immediately CC'd, so you got to be careful about it. Another thing that you can do, and this is very common for Meis in Overwatch, is you can get into a really tough fight. Let's say that there's like a camp fight going on right now. You could go in, throw your snowball at the enemies, pop this, and sit on the point. And because you're not stopped or protected, you can actually still or fight over the point. You can still contest the point, and the people that are contesting the point are about to get stunned, and you're healing through everything. So this is a really powerful combo, and I highly recommend using it to contest camps. She's actually really good at contesting camps for 100 reasons, and I'll talk about those as we go. But one big one is you go in there, you push everyone away, you drop this down, and then you sit there and you freeze and just out tank everything. You can contest the camps very well, but she has other talents that are really great for that. Let's talk about her ultimate abilities before we get too much into her talents. Her first ultimate ability is called Avalanche. What Avalanche does is it fires off a big ball. It starts off with a little snowman here, but fires off a big ball that scoops up all the enemies, and then it stuns them based off the amount of enemies that were locked in there. Followed up by your Blizzard is really powerful, but you have to be able to get up there, and because it pulls everyone away from your team, it is kind of a challenge. But there is also the thing that you have mobility, so you can charge behind their team and then send them all into your team and then CC them all down over there, and suddenly you've got yourself a really powerful engage. It's also an amazing talent if you just want to throw someone right up against a wall, because it just breaks immediately at a wall and can allow you to engage in a very powerful sense. It's got a really low cooldown, and it's also great on camps too. If you see your team fighting over a boss and the enemy team fighting over a boss, you can slide right in and then send everyone off of the boss point while you cap it, and then you've got yourself a really powerful ability. So it can be used as a Gust, except for if Gust was on a tank that also had an engage, really long range engage. So overall, I think this talent is extremely powerful. It is very strong. Then the next ability, the next ultimate that Mei has is the Ice Wall. Now the Ice Wall is it's a wall, but it's a vector targeted wall that you can aim in any direction starting from a lot of different areas, meaning that if you want to, say you're getting to a fight late and all the enemies are running away as they see that you're showing up, you can throw a wall here where not a lot of other people can throw walls here. I mean, you can get a Leoric to put down an Entomb there, and that should work as well, but Tazdar can't do that, and Nazeebo can do a circle, but it's not as big as this wall is, so there is the benefit of that. The other benefit is that it works kind of like Leyline. It actually stops everyone in their tracks, and at the end of it, it slows for 75% for 3 seconds. This is a pretty powerful engage, because let's say that you guys are charging into a fight, right? One thing that you have that Tazdar doesn't, and Leoric kind of does, you have a really fast engage. So let's say that you are ready to fight, and their front line, say someone steps up a little too early and the rest of their team's back here, you can actually charge in like this, pull them. Oh, didn't mean to reactivate that. You can charge in, and let's say that we don't hit them. Let's say that we just charge in like this and we stop early. we can immediately freeze their backline and then slow this person while they're trying to get away. They're going to get hit by that, and you can kill one person off, and then everyone's slowed by 75%, you can go for another fight. Or if you just want to stun them right at the end of it, you could time this out in a way that right when they get done with the freeze, they're immediately frozen again. Then they still have, for a little bit, they have the ability to be slowed for 75%. So overall, you can combo a lot off of both of her ultimate abilities, and they're both going to require a lot of practice because they can be rather bad if you push the entire enemy team away when you were winning the fight, or you lock everyone down on the enemy team while you were winning the fight, and suddenly the targets you were trying to kill are now frozen, and the targets you weren't trying to kill are killing your team. So both of these can be very bad, and they can both be very good. So I highly recommend practicing these a lot in try mode before you get in. With that being said, those are both of her ultimate abilities. Let's get into her talents, and I'm going to go relatively quick in these, but I do want to talk a little bit about, because I'm going to be talking about the builds that I recommend in the end. So, Heavy Pack. You increase the duration of the slow from your Q, from your snowball, by 1.5 seconds. That's a 3-second slow, pretty good. Each time your blizzard damages an enemy hero, you reduce the cooldown of your snowblind by 0.125 seconds. If you're hitting 2 people in your W, then you are going to cut the cooldown of your Q in half, making it a 5-second cooldown. If you're hitting 3 or more people, you can have a relatively low cooldown of your Q. To give you kind of an idea, you can throw out your Q, throw out your W. Oh, hold on, I need to turn off toggle cooldowns. Let's do this again. You can throw out your Q, you can throw out your W, and then watch the cooldown of your Q. It goes by relatively quickly, but it's not really enough to where you can throw multiples of those out during a Q, so I'm actually not a huge fan of this talent at level 1, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. Ice Storm. Every third hit against an enemy hero deals additional damage. Blizzard's final stun deals 125% increased damage to all enemies, including structures, including minions. So this is actually a really good talent for wave clear, and this is going to be used in the wave clear build. Then we have Heat Transfer. Basic attacks against stunned, rooted, slowed enemies deal 33% more damage. Remember, her auto attack damage doesn't do a lot. I'm not really concerned about that. The next point is actually really good. Each time Mei stuns or slows an enemy hero, she heals for 39 health. This sounds like a low amount because at level 20 you have 6,000 health, so 39 health is very, very low. But what people don't get is you actually slow people a lot with a lot of different things. So you gotta remember, this is hitting every 0.25 seconds, and this is slowing people every time that it hits, and you can hit 3 different people at a time, meaning that suddenly you're healing for 120 every 0.25 seconds, which means that you're actually healing for 480 health per second as a tank. That's closing in on about 8% of your health per second. That's a lot of healing. And guess what? There's more ways to do that as well. And we'll get to that in a bit. But it can be a very powerful talent, and I'm going to call that the Mal'Ganis build. So there's the Wave Clear build, and there's the Mal'Ganis build. Or Sustain. Let's call it the Sustained build. Because the Wave Clear build, I was calling the Joanna build, and I was calling the Mal'Ganis build. But we actually have a Sustain, and we have a Wave Clear build. So, level 4, we have Slush Ball. Deals 50% increased damage, and structures hit are disabled for 3 seconds. This is also part of the Wave Clear build. Being able to do 50% increased damage will allow you to do more to structures, but it'll also allow you to do more to minions, so you can actually just do a W and a Q, couple auto attacks, you can clear a lane, which is going to be really, really powerful. Then we also have the ability to turn off structures, which on the maps that Wave Clear is very important on, turning off structures is not bad either. Tomb of the Spider Queen, for example, one of the most important Wave Clear maps. If you can turn off structures while your web weavers are pushing, you'll get a lot more value off of it. So this is a really powerful talent for maps like Tomb of the Spider Queen. Then we go into Cold Front. If Mei enters her own blizzard while icing is active, the cooldown of icing is reduced by 7 seconds, and she gains 50 mana. So if you're doing that combo that I talked about, where like the enemies are running out, you use your E and then you push them back in, you will have your thing back available in 5 seconds. So you can even cryo freeze after that, and then you'll have it available so you can get out of a fight. It's cool, but at the same time, I don't know if it's that cool. So, the next talent I think is absolutely busted and should be a big priority in every build that you're not going to be getting that much value out of Slush Ball. And that is Crystallize. You reduce the cooldown of your trait by 15 seconds, making it a 25-second cooldown. That's a huge reduction in cooldown for a level 4 talent. You also gain 50 spell armor while it's active and while it's going to be ending. So even if someone breaks it early with like Shield Shatter, which Shield Shatter will do less damage because you have 50 spell armor, or they try to burst you down before or after it's over, you are going to be in a really healthy spot. This is an amazing talent. Even if you ignored the spell armor, even if they remove the spell armor from this talent, I still think that it's a really good talent. Because of the cooldown reduction. So I think this is a really, really good talent. They're not going to remove the spell armor purely because it says that on the actual tooltip. It doesn't actually say this shortened tooltip doesn't say the cooldown reduction part, which is weird because I think that's actually the better part of it, but whatever. So this is an amazing talent. At level 7, Induce Hibernation. Blizzard reduces the enemy's damage dealt by 40% while they're in it. While the stun hits them, they will also be reduced for 4 seconds after getting hit by the stun. Not when the stun ends, but getting hit by the stun. Meaning that they will actually only be having their damage reduced by 2.75 seconds, which is still really good because right after an engage is usually when people are going to want to fight back. You have two choices. You can run away or you can fight back. But because Mei is someone that's going to be slowing you a lot, you're probably going to want to try to fight back. But fighting back, you're going to have reduced damage. So initially, I thought this talent was like the best talent on the tier. But then I started thinking about it a little bit more. And against heavily mobile teams, they're going to be jumping away from your stuns pretty consistently. And people won't want to stay in these for very long, so I'm going to say that this talent isn't as good as I initially thought, and after playing this a little bit, it's probably not that great. Skating Away. If your E, you know the little circle at the end of your E, if that hits an ally hero, this will give them movement speed and physical armor. This is great for peeling for your team, but overall, you're not likely going to be giving the physical armor or the movement speed to your team because you're most likely going to be using this as an engage. And the other part about this is it does give it to yourself, which is really good. This is not a block charge, so you just have flat 50 physical armor for when it's most important, right as you're diving in. And if you combo that physical armor with the fact that you might also have some spell armor in there, these are some pretty good options for survivability. And then finally, we have Backup Battery. You activate it to remove all roots and slows, regenerate 20% of your maximum health over 2 seconds, and the cooldown of this ability is reduced every time that you pick up a regen globe. So I'm going to give you guys a pretty straightforward option for this. If you're against a lot of mages, Backup Battery is great. If you're against a lot of physical damage dealers, auto attackers, then Skating Away is really good. And then finally, if the enemies have really no mobility at all, then you combo your abilities so that they always land in here and they have that 40% damage reduction, and that seems really good. But overall, I would try to grab one of these two talents if you can. As far as the ults, we'll talk about those later, but I will say that my favorite is Avalanche. It's such a low cooldown, and it's such a great playmaker. Level 13, we have a few talents. Flurry. While you're in your own Blizzard, you gain 50% attack speed, and your cooldown for Blizzard refreshes 75% faster. Which means it's not going to really half the cooldown, but it's going to be a little bit less than half the cooldown. Wait, no. It's going to be a little more than half the cooldown. Let me clarify. It's going to drop the cooldown by less than half. So it's not as good as if it said it reduces the cooldown by 50%. It makes it to where it refreshes 75% faster. Yeah, hopefully that clarifies. It'll put its 14-second cooldown to about 9 seconds. Does that make sense? There we go. If you're in the Blizzard, when it ends, you get 3 additional seconds of these bonuses. I'm not a big fan of this talent for a lot of reasons, and the other video came out to be like an hour and 20 minutes, so I'm not going to go into it. Cooling Servos. While your Cryo Freeze is active, your basic abilities recharge 200% faster. That's really good. Basic attack slow for 20% passively. That's also really good, especially since you attack one time per second, and the slow lasts 1.5 seconds, so it's a permanent slow that you can keep on people. Which is going to be great for peeling off your team for a lot of different tanks that have to kind of walk in first, like Garrosh, for example. Polar Vortex. Using ability causes Maze to deal 53 damage a second to nearby enemies for 4 seconds. It also slows them by 20%. This talent's damage is really bad. It's not that great. The slow is also not that great, considering that you can get a slow from your auto attacks. Where this talent becomes strong is when you have heat transfer, and suddenly you can heal for 40 every time this procs, and you can be surrounded by enemy heroes, and you're just out healing everything. So cooling servos in the engage build, or the wave clear build, and then also polar vortex in the sustain build. Pretty straightforward. I wouldn't take Flurry, but again, I don't really like auto attack builds on tanks. Maybe there's a bruiser build with Mei that you can run that with. Then we have Fresh Powder. Snowblind gains an additional charge and its range is increased. I don't really like any of the Q talents. Doesn't do enough damage. Isn't really worth it to me. Black Ice. This is an 80% slow. So what this does is it makes it to where your icing slow effect no longer decays, and you do 300% more damage to the enemies that are hit very close to your E. And that's, again, an 80% slow for 1.5 seconds. This is an extremely powerful talent. It's an amazing level 16 upgrade. Then we have Acclimation. So this is what you'd be running for like an engage build, wave clear build, something like that. This isn't helping for wave clear. It's just more the fact of, I mean, you can use it for wave clear, but I wouldn't. It's just the fact of for wave clear builds, you only really want to take talents that help you with your wave clear up to level 7, because that's when wave clear is most important. When you start getting into the later portions of the game, you don't actually want talents that increase your wave clear, because you want talents that are like, wait, what can I do with these level leads that I gained? Now let's set up. So that's where Black Ice comes in. A ton of damage, a ton of CC, an amazing talent for engage. Then we have Acclimation, which is more for that sustain build. Each time that you stun or slow an enemy hero, you are going to be dealing and healing increase by 1%. Now, this is the healing she receives, so it's not just her own healing, but it's also anyone that wants to heal her. So you combo that with a healer, you're going to be healing more. This stacks up to 20 times, so 20%. Mei also gains 10 armor. This is kind of like Mal'Ganis' increased movement speed that he gains for every time that he heals himself. It stacks almost instantly on Mal'Ganis. Well, it's going to stack almost instantly on this because you're going to be comboing it with Polar Vortex as well, which is going to be slowing everyone. You're going to be comboing it with your W. So watch how fast this thing stacks up. I'm going to do a W and watch. Boom. 20% already. That's how fast it is. We've got that little thing going around us this whole time. We're going to slow people, and we're going to be doing just damage to everyone around us. We're going to be healing for 20% more, and we're always going to have this snowstorm going. We're always going to have that 20% going. It's really easy to stack and really easy to keep stacked for a long period of time. So, Mal'Ganis build, sustain build, exactly like that. Then level 20, I would recommend upgrading her ults first, because having a 40-second cooldown on your Avalanche and also having it fire out a bunch of snowblinds in the area is just incredible. There's so much damage potential from that, and it's really, really powerful. Because it hits people right before they get hit by this, and then they're all going to take damage after they get hit by that. So it's really, really cool. Shatter's also really good, reduces their armor and has them take damage after they get done with the ice wall, making it more valuable to lock people up with the ice wall. So it's like more like you want to kind of use it like ley line rather than as a wall. And then the big one, every 15 seconds your Snowblind will do increased area and 200% more damage. It's just not that good. And then Flash Freeze is actually really good. It's kind of like indestructible on Joanna if you're being focused. In the higher ranks and competitive scene, people will focus down tanks. Having the ability to instantly activate your trait, and this says that it's not It doesn't say it's an untalented version, meaning that if you did take this talent right here, you'll get the 50 spell armor. If you took this talent here, you're going to have higher or faster cooldown recharge. So you can use a trait right before you die, and then right as you die, you get another trait. Or you can combo them better where like you die first, and then you trade immediately after. And like, you will not die through all of that. Like, your team, if everyone's focusing on killing you, your team will kill them before then. The only way you die from this is if your team just dies before any of this happens. Which, if they're not focusing your team, you definitely take Cascade. Or sorry, if they're focusing your team and not you, you take Cascade. If they're focusing you, Flash Freeze is a really good talent. It has the same cooldown as Indestructible, so it's rather strong. I would say it's arguably better than Indestructible, because Indestructible you have to get healed afterwards, and this one you don't have to get you don't need to be healed because it's naturally going to heal you with it. So it's a really good talent. So with all of that being said, let me talk about the builds that I recommend. So if you're on a map that you need to hold a point for a long period of time, Sky Temple, Volskaya, Braxis. Braxis is really the best map for this. The other two are arguably, you could still go the wave clear talents if you want to, but let's talk about the first few talents. Now, I do want to say that when I'm talking about builds for May, they are very situational on a lot of different pieces. So it's more like there's going to be initial pieces to a build, and then there's going to be later, like there's like packages, like on Leoric there's the ghost package, right? If you're going to take one of the 13 talents, you need to also take the 16 talent. It's the same idea. If you're going to take heat transfer, you're pretty much committing to also taking polar vortex and acclimation. If not, it's not worth taking heat transfer, because you're going to lose so much wave clear in the early portions of the game, which is so important to take. So if you don't need wave clear, if you're on Hanamura, you're on Braxis, and you don't need that wave clear, or even BOE, and you don't need that wave clear, heat transfer suddenly gains a lot of value by taking these other two talents. It's the same idea. If you're going to take Crystallize, now Crystallize is a great talent on its own. So instead, what I'm going to say is if you're going to take Cooling Servos, you pretty much have to take Crystallize. So we'll get to that as well. But if you need the wave clear, if you're on a map that's double soak heavy and you don't have enough wave clear on your team, or you just need to cover it for your team because you're in low ranks and your team is just too busy fighting people, Ice Storm is the talent to take. It's also great in team fights, but it's great for wave clear. So we're gonna take Ice Storm. We're gonna start off with a sustain build. This is again the Mal'Ganis build if you're going with like the locations. Because you're going to want to sustain longer, you're also going to take Crystallize, because you're going to sustain longer and have a lower cooldown in your trait. So when you're just not sustaining enough, you pop your trait, and then you gain all of your life back, and then you're sustaining again, and you should be able to sustain long enough for your trait to come back. Level 7, you can go with either or. Physical armor is really good, but if you're going for more sustained backup battery, it's going to give you just a little bit more. Both of these are more of like when the burst happens. Same thing with this, when the burst happens. But the rules are less about the builds here, and more about the rules that I stated earlier. Heavy mage, heavy physical, or low mobility. And then pick whichever one you want. Prioritize backup battery if you are in the wave clear build, because you can quickly go wave clear, grab a globe, and then come back to your team. Either ult, it's very situational. I'm going to go with Avalanche in most situations, though. Level 13, we have the... we have Polar Vortex. This is a must if you're taking heat transfer. It's a ridiculous amount of healing. Acclimation is a must if you're taking these other two talents. It's a ridiculous amount of armor and healing. And then finally, level 20, you are going to most likely just upgrade your ult. But again, if you're going for sustain, you're just trying to stay alive forever, same rules apply for upgrading Flash Freeze if you're being focused down. And that is the basic idea of the sustain build. So if I was just to turn on an enemy hero, let's say Blaze, let me use a hero that actually replicates a bunch of heroes. So let's see what happens when I give the enemies the Lost Vikings. Where are they? Oh, they don't give me the choice for the Lost Vikings. Unless it's Vikings? No. So let's do Samuro. And I'm going to refresh the forts really quick. And I just want to show you how much potential healing you have. So I'm going to start taking hits by this. And when Samuro shows up, I'm going to just heal. We're going to drop down this and watch this healing. I'm out healing the turret and Samuro. And I can even pop my number 1 ability and still be out healing the majority of this. And guess what? Oh, it gets a little too strong. I'm going to heal my entire health bar back up, and then I'm going to drop down another W. And you're just like a Mal'Ganis. You have a ton of CC, you have a ton of healing, and you try to make sure that your abilities are going out to where you always have that that snow going out for the best of your ability. And there you go. You can tank so much, and you can heal so much. So again, this is what it's going to look like when you're just sitting there and healing through all of that. It's a ton of healing, ton of armor, ton of sustain. So that would be the sustain build or the Mal'Ganis build. Now let's talk a little bit more of like the Joanna build. Let's refresh. So we're going to be taking Ice Storm level 1 for that wave clear. We're going to be taking Crystallize at this level. You can take Slush Ball. It does increase the wave clear. So if you find yourself really needing the wave clear, or you're on a map that like pushes with an objective. So like if you're on Infernal Shrines or you're on Tomb of the Spider Queen, where you need to be constantly moving around and getting wave clear, and also you get a push with an objective, then I would say Slush Ball is great because you can turn off structures and you can get that wave clear. So now you have the two major pieces for doing wave clear. 125% increased damage to all enemies with this, and you have the Slush Ball, which does 50% more damage with this. So both of these talents are going to be doing a lot more to minions. So if we were to refresh forts, now keep in mind that the scaling is a little weird in this, and I'm level 20. So you still will need to auto attack the backline minions a couple times to get extra value out of this. But in the later levels, it does clear really well. So that's pretty much all you should need to do. And guess what? The backline is cleared up for you. You can clear up the front line if you need to a little bit. Trying to get away from these guys as they're doing this. We can also just send them flying. We don't have a lot of sustain yet because we're not in a talent for that. But yeah, you get the wave clear. You can double soak relatively easily with that. And that's all you need is those two talents. Now the rest of the build, because you already have the wave clear that you need for the early portion of the game, the rest of the build is going to be about setting up good team fights for your team. So what we're going to be looking at is we are going to be looking at level 7, backup battery or skating away. I really like skating away, but you could go with any of these talents. Again, same rules apply. Because we have a lot of wave clear, I'm going to take backup battery because I can grab a lot of globes. We're going to be taking Avalanche, but Ice Wall works perfectly fine in this engage because you can lock or block off the front line with the wall, and you can lock down the back line with the Ice Wall, or by like ley lining them. So both are really good, but I personally still really like Avalanche. And I think these might be a little preference, to be honest. That being said, we have level 13. Level 13, we're going to be wanting to go with cooling servos most of the case. Even though we didn't take the talent on this that gives us a lower cooldown, a 20% slow is going to make it easier to land other abilities, and it's going to allow us to kind of like peel off the enemy divers and stuff without needing to do too much. And it's going to return our cooldowns faster. So if we want to charge in and make like a play, like I said on that camp, this will be really, really powerful. So we're going to take cooling servos. And again, it's really good for stuff like this, where like you're going in to like grab them at this camp, and you're going to knock back all the enemies, and then when they come back in, you're going to use your W, and then you can fight for a little bit, you can trait, gaining your W and your Q back available, and then you can even just send your ult and send off the enemies if you need to. Like, there's so many potential for fighting on enemy camps. So Mei's going to be probably one of the best invading tanks in the game, I would say. You want to try to invade enemy camps, and so like when you hit that 1 minute mark where you know the enemies are going for a camp, you should always be trying to invade with Mei if you have a coordinated team, because you're almost always going to be able to win in those fights with all of these tools you have at level 1 and as you start getting into the later levels. Level 16, in this build, I see no reason to ever go anything but Black Ice. Having the ability to do a 80% slow on people on a low cooldown and also be able to immediately combo with a blizzard is huge. It's also a huge amount of damage. So you kind of have a Nubarox E, and then you also have Subdue. And both of those combined is just really, really powerful. So having two of like the best abilities of two different heroes is amazing. And then finally level 20, same rules apply. Upgrade your ult unless you're being focused down. And I think this is going to be a pretty meta build. I think Slush Ball into Chrysalis is the only thing that I would really like to take. But if you need that wave clear, you might just have to take Slush Ball. So I think Slush Ball will have a higher win rate, but I think Crystallize will actually be better in competitive when you have people that can help with that wave clear. But that gives you kind of an idea. In solo queue, Slush Ball; in competitive, Crystallize, and that should give you the build I would imagine for May. Where you want to be as far as this, and just that 80% slow is going to be incredible. The amount of engage potential you have in this build is actually like insane. You'd pretty much just like charge in like this, knock them back, and then just immediately send them over here, and then you just immediately freeze them while they're in here. I mean, like, there's just so much potential in this build. It's incredibly strong. But yeah, with all of that being said, that is new May. What do you guys think about May? And I say new May, she's new to the Nexus, but she's in here. That is May. What do you guys think about May? I don't think that she's as annoying as she is in Overwatch, and I like that she's in the tank role, so you don't add a whole bunch more CC as a damage dealer, right? So I love that she's a tank. I think that she's going to be a really cool tank. She's going to require a lot of skill, though, because she doesn't have any passive armor, and she doesn't have anything that really gives her armor. So you're going to need to make sure that you're not overusing your icing, because you're not unstoppable during this. You can be interrupted at any point, and you need to make sure that you're using your Blizzard correctly, because people can just walk out of it. So she can be one of the most powerful tanks, I think, but she can also be very, very weak. I also think that there is a world that she can be a solo laner. Not that we need more things that Blizzard makes as a tank that ends up getting thrown as a solo laner. Cough, cough, Blaze, Urel, and Maev. I mean, Maev didn't end up as a solo laner, but she was originally a tank. Wave, I mean, on PTR, she had 10 armor. She had like 30% more health. Yeah, it was wild. But yeah, so that's the thing about it is, like, I think that she's a cool tank. There is, I mean, an auto attack build if you want to try solo lane. There's also that double soaking that you can bring if you want to go that direction too. She brings a ton of CC to teams, so flanking with like an icing and then into a Blizzard could be really, really good. So yeah, I think she has a lot of potential in multiple roles. But yeah, what do you guys think of May entering the Nexus? I think that she will actually fit really well, and I don't think they made her kit too annoying. So yeah, let me know. And feel free to check out any of my other videos. I'll do my best to bring out some more content for May over the rest of the week, as well as in a couple weeks after we've seen where she stands as far as like win rates or builds. After balance patches, I'll do some more videos on her. There is also a Mal'Ganis that got slight rework, so I will be doing a short video on Mal'Ganis' rework. So see you guys in a bit, and you guys, yeah, again, feel free to check out my other videos.